How would you like to make your first million? And today we have Billy Keels with us, and he is an entrepreneur that travels around the world, especially originally from United States, and he's a coach, speaker, and has helped a lot of corporate entrepreneurs in order to start and grow the business. So, Billy, tell us, what are the 5 steps that you recommend entrepreneurs in order to make the first million?
Welcome to Unstoppable Podcast with Harry Sardinas, inspiring conversations with influential millionaires, investors, thought leaders, entrepreneurs who are making a massive difference with their innovative products and services, and sharing the challenges and wisdom of how they sold their first million.
Yeah, Harry, and first of all, let me just say that it's really a pleasure to be here and join you on the podcast today, and I'll do my little part to add value to the entire audience. So just to answer that question, and also I want to give a caveat because the person that I typically am really helping is a corporate executive, so it may be a little bit of a slant there. And the reason I say that is because there was an article not long ago in Fortune magazine or in Fortune that said 41% of corporates have a side business, right? And so when I think about the side business, it's a path that I took. What I want to do is share with you the path that I took and the path that I'm helping others with. And those 5 steps to the first million, first of all, starts with, I'm just going to go through it really quickly and then I'll come back to each one if that's okay with you. It's really about being able to gain clarity, number one. And then once you do that, it's to being able to protect the career. You want to then make sure that you have an asset that you can control. From that point, what you want to be able to do is identify and serve your clients. And then the last part for me is consistency. So you'll probably notice there's 5 C's. So if I can break each one of those down just very quickly. When I talk about clarity, especially when I was working in a corporate role, there were so many different emotions that I was managing. You know, I wanted to continue to be a really good employee. At the same time, I wanted to be available for a family. And there was many times where I felt like they were just completely overwhelmed because I was trying to do everything for everyone. And so when I realized, when I started hearing this voice that was calling me to entrepreneurship, I needed to get really crystal clear about what it was that I wanted to do. And more importantly, Harry, and what I realized was key is to really understand why I wanted to do it. And for me, a lot of why I wanted to follow this noise that was getting louder and louder in my head and in my heart and my stomach calling me to entrepreneurship was because I wanted to create legacy for my children and be able to do that for families. So the first
Yeah.
step was really important about being able to get really clear on what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it. The second of my 5 C's, as I mentioned to you, was really about what could I do to protect my career? I was, as an executive, working in enterprise software space, and a lot of the executives that I work with and serve today, you know, you're an executive in a large multinational company. You're earning over $200,000 a year. You have a lot of responsibility, lots of pressure. You want to continue to move up the corporate ladder, or you want to figure out how do you actually continue to perform against your key performance indicators, and at the same time create some space, more space for yourself, for your family, and for this new dream. So it's really important to be able to protect your career. Afterwards, once you've done those first 2 steps effectively, then it's about making sure that you are able to create an asset, but an asset that you actually will be able to control forever. And that you may want to own that asset for the rest of your life, or you may get to a point that this asset you no longer want to own it, and someone wants to pay you to be able to take that asset off of your hands. So that's the third thing that I found that is really important: being able to create and control an asset. From there, and Harry, you know this, if you have a really great idea but you don't have any clients,
Mm-hmm.
then it's very, very
A
difficult
hobby.
for you to, yeah, exactly. It's a hobby. So you have to be able to get to
Uh-huh.
that 4th C. And that 4th C is really about being able to create and serve, to attract and serve your clients. And there's different client types. You know, there's so many different business models. There's so many different ways, whether you're working with an individual client or maybe in a business to consumer scenario, or maybe you want to serve from a business to business scenario. But being able to be crystal clear on not only the demographics, but also the psychographics of the client that you want to be able to serve. And so that brings us to 4 C's. I think we did clarity, and then after we did clarity, we did career, and then we did control, and now we talked about the client. And the 5th C is actually probably the most important, you have to be able to do all of these things consistently. Because if you're not doing them consistently, then it goes back to what you just mentioned, Harry, and you have more of a hobby than you actually have a seven-figure business. So hopefully, just right off the bat, my way of looking at those 5 C's to help you get to your first million was my path, is the path that I'm helping others to. So happy to go for wherever you want to go from there.
So corporate versus an entrepreneur. We have really a lot of our listeners that they are on the fence. They have this corporate career.
Yeah.
They are very successful, but they start trapping this golden cage, right?
Yeah.
And they are listening to you and they say, wow, I wish I have the courage to do what he did, to have to do the transition from corporate to have your own business. And then, you have the good things about being an entrepreneur. Look at you. You travel all over the world. You live in France. You live in Spain. You're originally from the United States. So you have designed your life what it was for you. Even a previous guest that we interviewed in this podcast, the guy was from New Zealand, or is from New Zealand. He become very successful in his early age, become a multimillionaire. And then he bought a huge house in New Zealand by the mountains, right?
Yeah.
And later, and after he was, this is what I really want. This is what I did it for. I already have it. That was the big deal. He took a wrong decision, lost everything, and then after a lot of work within himself, now he started the business again, and now he lives in a yacht and he travels all Europe, and this is what made him happy. And he was able to build and grow the business, focusing in creating that life. And when he started to travel in the yacht, then he get off and buy a caravan and travel for Europe caravan, then buy the yacht again. So, and this is what made him happy. And he run all his businesses on the move all the time, on the road. Yeah. So the whole point of the story is that this transition from corporate to entrepreneur, it seems that corporate employees that say, wow, this is amazing. But let's face it, because when you're an entrepreneur, it's completely different when you are an employee. Because when you're in corporate, you can tell to the people, this is not my job. When you're an entrepreneur, everything is your job. So tell us the good, the bad, and the ugly of that transition from corporate to entrepreneur.
Yeah. So, and I love that you set that up. It actually makes me think of something. So I grew up I grew up in a household where I watched both of my parents many times have 2 different jobs. And so they had 2 different jobs, and they did that because they needed to pay bills, Harry. It wasn't because they were trying to buy a yacht, or they weren't trying to have this amazing life. They were just wanting to pay the bills so that they could take care of their kids, me being one of those kids. And so the way that I grew up is maybe a little bit longer answer to your question, but the way that I grew up, Harry, is I grew up thinking that as long as I got really good grades, that I got a good job, and I made a lot of money, that I wouldn't have any problems. Because the thing that, the thing
that's
exactly. I mean, so like this bit, right? Because when you start to realize that you're not alone, I started thinking, man, money solves all problems. And that was for a really long part of my life that was the truth. That was the truth. I had more money than I knew what to do with. I started making great investments. I started building a business on the side, all of these things. But you also realize, in like the story that you just told, you can be a multimillionaire or whatever the equivalent is for you. But once you realize is that money, what it does, money is energy, and money solves money problems. But there are lots of problems that go beyond, or issues that go beyond money. And whether you're talking about your health, and that can be health, whether it's your physical, your mental health, it can be the different relationships that you have. It can be your spirituality, your emotions. There are so many different areas of life that are important to make sure that you have covered, that go beyond money. So for anyone who has been like you and I, Harry, when we grew up and we thought that money solved all problems, it's just a reminder that money solves money problems. And what that has to do with someone in a corporate life, and it has to do with a lot of the corporate type of that I'm serving, because they grew up with the same mentality as you and I had, Harry. And so when you're in your corporate life,
and they get attached to that job, they don't want to let it go.
Well, it's the job, it's the benefits, it's when you walk in, you have a really big company on you have the big house, and but there's also another part of it, right? There's a of it, which is when you're working for a very large company, whatever large company that is recognized because they're on TV or they're on the internet constantly, it opens doors for you. So it also starts to help you believe that just because you are you, so Billy Keels that work for big company XYZ, when you're working for the big companies, don't forget the big companies have lots of money and lots of branding goes into creating those brands. And so those brands are also extremely powerful. So you ask the question about, what's the good, bad, and the ugly as it relates to corporate life, or at making movements from corporate life to owning your own business. One is about remembering that corporate brands are very, very strong because they billions, if not millions of dollars, euros, whatever, to create the brand that opens many, many doors for you. When you make it to your own company, if you're not understanding who your client is, how you want to attract them, how you want to serve them, and doing it consistently, you can find that there's a lot of frustration. And that's what number of times, so clients who end up me, who have tried to do something themselves and they start, but they get stuck because they want to do the things properly at their corporate job. They want to also build this business on the side, and they don't have an efficient way of doing it. They start to realize really quickly that unless you have a process, a system to attract your clients, to serve your clients, that
Absolutely.
it can be frustrating, right? And so that's part of the frustration. On the other side, could you ask the
And the fact that they make
good,
six figures as an employee and they're an amazing employee, that doesn't mean that they're good entrepreneurs. Completely different ball game.
Well, yeah, because it's to your point. So this is another thing that's really, really important, and one of the things that we highlight. You are working for a very large corporation. You are, because big companies are like systems, right? And everyone has a role. There is a very specifically defined role. There's high specialization. And whether you are in sales, you are in sales leadership, that's the area of sales marketing. That's the area that I worked at during my almost 3 decades in corporate. And so that's what I know the most. But you've become very specialized, and you're doing the same thing, and you're talking the same language, and you're looking at the same pipelines, and you're looking at the same recovery, and you're looking at the same action plans. At the same time, when you're very fortunate, especially in sales leadership people, because if you don't generate revenue, then you don't have anything to put into the rest of the system to provide finance, et cetera, et cetera. And at this time, when you have high specialization, when you start to own your own business, especially when it's a small business getting started, you go from high specialization to now you become the CEO of your own company. But the CEO of your own company means that you are the chief everything officer, meaning that you must do sales, you must do finance, you must do
100%.
operation, and if it's not you doing them, you at least need to understand them so that you can design of your business. And it should be very simple, right? Hopefully, I think you will with me. In the beginning, it should be very simple. Don't make it as complex as your corporate job, because if not, you're going to end up with even more frustration, even more overwhelm. And so as you that simple understanding of the different parts of your business, it allows you to be much more proficient, because then you know what you are going to hire for, what skill set that you may be looking for. So I think I probably jumped a little around
It's
a little
perfect.
bit, but
It's perfect.
it's
And
some of the
let's keep talking in the topic, because, like I
yeah,
said,
sure.
we have a lot of listeners on the fence. The thing, Billy, become an entrepreneur is a skill. The more you
Yeah,
practice, the better you become. Right?
yeah, yeah,
It's like driving. You read a book about swimming, you swim, it's not gonna work. Right? The more you
yeah.
practice, the better you become. Same driving a car. So being an entrepreneur is skill based. We all
Yeah.
can agree
Yeah.
that a high paid corporate or a corporate employee have all the skill to be an excellent entrepreneur.
Mm.
Where the problem goes, number one, I really advise everyone to have a mentor, to have a coach, someone like
Yeah.
you that have experienced this transition.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's like having a driver instructor, right?
Mm.
When you go into license, well, if it's helpful, your driver instructor, of course, it get you. And it's not difficult, this transition. However, it's gonna take a challenge, okay,
Mm.
in terms of how the psychology and the mindset operate, because the dynamic change.
Mhm.
And the other thing that we in this podcast, like, do it gradually, something like you described, Billy, also before the broadcast.
Mm.
Like, okay, if you want to do this transition, okay, you have your 6-figure job. I love what you said, or you have your well-paid job, and you said protect that. Okay, what you mean protect? Because while you having this job in parallel, you're gonna start to open your own business, but you have to be able to do it effectively that you can protect it. Yeah, my first business, for example, when I built my first business, it was not corporate job. I was doing room service in the Hilton Canary Wharf in London.
Yeah.
And so that was the job that I could find there because I didn't speak good.
Yeah.
But in the Hilton Canary Wharf, in the room service, in the lift, is where I built my property business. Okay, so every time that I order a burger for the 27th floor, I was making phone call and I was acquiring the flats and then the tenants and everything. After I finished my job, then I was doing my business until one day, the money that I'm making one day in my business, it was more than the whole month in the Hilton. And that day, I decided to leave the Hilton. And that happened 19 years ago. Never look back. So the point of the story is that that when we've been in a business and we are in ideally, right? And by the way, and my business, it was in property. It was renting rooms. So despite that I was in the Hilton doing room service, I talked to everyone. Everybody's my friend. They told me everything about having about the room business, right? So the whole point that we have, your corporate path can land you, that can help you to spiral your business. However, this is the situation that we have been. We have the situation that people, our listeners, they are always on the fence, and then one day they arrive to the job and they say you're fired, and now it's too late because now you have this big house, you have the big car, you have all your lifestyle, and you need to start from there to start to learn the skills, and it's take a little bit of time to promote the people we talk about. And we have the other options out there, the impulsive corporate that said, that's it, I quit. I cannot handle this job anymore. They don't take me seriously. Some people have previous guests in the podcast that shared the story that they said, I have enough. They quit well, and then they have been in a tough process because they have to discover everything by themselves, and it's tough. What are the that you think that corporate people we established everyone can be a good entrepreneur? They have the ability to do it because it's skill based. Skill, anybody can do it. So what are the major challenges that you have seen in corporate people doing to become an entrepreneur, and how these challenges can be overcome?
Yeah. So, if you'll allow me, Harry, I want to unpack a couple of things because you've just said some things that really struck a core in my right. I listened to you talk about cleaning the rooms at the Hilton, and one of my very first opportunities to live overseas and work in a different culture with a different language. I worked in the IT space the very time I had an opportunity. And because I didn't speak the language well enough, right? I was very good if I was able to speak English, but I decided I wanted to learn French. I wanted to learn French language, French culture, and I wanted to have a personal growth opportunity. Unfortunately, my language skills didn't follow my life skills at that point in time. So I was
Tell me about it.
I was doing order entry. So this goes back to early 2000, and I was literally the orders a day and putting them in a system that then sent them off to the logistics factory and all that kind of stuff to put them together. So I believe that number one, when you have the humility to follow a dream, to chase a dream, no matter how small or how large, it helps to set you up for the future for being resilient, right?
Yeah, right.
It builds major character, and it has to, especially if you've done a big job before that, and then you decide that you want to have a life experience. So that's the first thing, because I do believe that I
used to be software developer before in Spain.
There you go.
I did that job.
Exactly. And so I'm sure that you heard from people that before, like, hang on a second, you had this skill, but now you're cleaning rooms.
No, my mom.
Well,
doing the room service. My mom was calling me. I was in. Because my mom, how I was raised, right? They want me to go to university. I got a degree, so I got a degree in chemical engineering. And then in Spain, I didn't find a job as chemical engineering, but I was writing software, right?
Yeah.
Java,
Yeah.
Oracle, this kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in Spain,
Yeah.
and then I decided, okay, that's it. I'm going to London. I want to learn English.
Yep.
Same story like you want, but then I have to start from the bottom. And my
Yep.
mom, was freaking out. She was
Yeah.
telling
Yeah.
me, "What are you doing there? Doing room service in a Hilton and the tables
All
and
this
so on?
education.
And you crazy?
Yeah.
Come back!" And she was telling everybody. She was very mad at me. I said,
Yeah.
come back to Spain. Why are you doing that in London? So,
Yeah.
yeah, I get, yeah.
And so that's the first part, right? And it's just to have that humility. You also talked about something else. And so I like to think a lot about languages, right? Because as someone originally from Columbus, Ohio, I've been very fortunate. I've put myself in situations to learn more languages. Living overseas for 24 years, I've been fortunate to work and travel throughout some 80 different countries. And so I always think about whenever I'm learning a language, right? And I've been fortunate to learn Spanish and French and Italian and Catalan, which is a language that they speak here locally. But you said something earlier. There is a big difference between understanding the theory of a language and being able to speak fluently in a language, right? And so it's whenever you want to learn a skill, and you talked about entrepreneurship, so we're going to bring it back there. Originally, I learned all of structure when I wanted to learn French, and I learned all the structure when I wanted to learn Spanish. And so as I started to learn the languages, I understood the structure. I had the vocabulary, and theoretically, I was very, very good. But there was a big difference between knowing the theory and actually being able to order something on the street when I was by myself. And so what you have to realize, and this comes back to the humility that you and I were just talking about, is it's okay to not be fluent in the beginning. What's not okay is to have a desire to become fluent and have the theory, but not do the work and feel uncomfortable to make mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake. You can begin to build your fluency. And we're talking about entrepreneurship. And so one of the things that you can also do that you talked about, Harry, which I also, that I'm in this role, it may sound a bit self-serving, but you can make the mistakes, and you can make the mistakes in a way that feel you don't have to pay full price for the mistakes, especially if you can find someone who's gone down the path that you're already looking to go down. You can learn from their mistakes. You have an exchange. You pay that person to help guide you through, and you still need to some mistakes, but just don't make the ones that are going to be the fatal types of mistakes. Which then brings us back to what you were talking about before, right? The challenges, some of the different challenges that you can have. And so if you think about having the humility to be able to go outside of comfort zone, to do something that's different, having the consistent actions of being able to learn the theory, and then also not being fully afraid to test the theory so that you can start to build up your expertise. Well, as you do that, especially if you've been in a corporate role, like I was in corporate for almost 3 decades, it's really easy for you to fall into the comfort trap to say, hey, listen, I actually know all of this already. I have this expertise, and to not move outside of that, especially when you want to follow that dream of fluency, like I was talking about before. Maybe your dream is fluency, and we'll use that as an analogy for following your entrepreneurial dream. Well, you have to come outside of your comfort zone. You have to begin to get the theory, what it is that you want to do. Harry, you and I, we both had experience in real rental properties. There are many people, and I've many different types of in alternative investments. And also, one of the things that you could do, especially when you are someone who has a specific expertise in your corporate role, look, analyze what that is. What skill that you have? What is it that makes you unique, so that you don't have to compete against every single other person that has a very similar skill? Because when you are able to attract your client, you have the brand that brings them forward, and you're able to share a skill that you have developed in your corporate role for over 2 decades. Well, then you become the only option in the marketplace that can help to teach someone else that skill. Does it happen overnight? Does it happen perfectly? Usually no and no. However, it does happen. You just have to be consistent, which is the 5th C that we talked about in the very beginning. So let me stop there. Just make sure that I'm answering the question that you asked, or see if you have any other questions.
Yeah, absolutely. 1 out of 5 entrepreneurs that we interviewed, we're interviewed with 500 millionaires, and 1 out of 5 are property millionaires, property investors, and
Yep.
1 out of 5 are tech multimillionaires. So which illustrates the statistic of this podcast that tech and property could be a very good vehicle to create wealth. However, one message why do you think that that we have this statistic in this podcast? Why do you think that 1 out of 5 millionaires that they come here, they are either property investors or tech entrepreneurs? Message do you have specifically for the people in tech and corporate doing the transition to start the tech business? Because like I said, the tech entrepreneurs in corporate, they make a lot of money. And then when they go into a startup, they're thinking that they're in a corporate, and they're thinking that that you need to hire this and hire this for that. And hey, this is a tech startup. You need an MVP. So tell us about the vehicles. What's your opinion about the property and the tech vehicles in terms to build wealth? And tell us also, for example, to people doing transition from corporate, maybe they can start to invest in some property or something that is more easy to everybody to understand. What is your view? Because you're the expert of this. So picking up your brain.
So there are things that come to mind, right? And it also, when it relates to tech, it depends on what are tech? Are you providing a service around an already existing software? Are you developing a software that has a very specific niche? So those are very different, I would say, profiles. But at the end of the day, both of them are extremely time intensive, right? Because they just require time in order for you to develop either a software product or creating a software, because you're going to need to implement that and derive some type of value. And so unless you have lots of time, and very few corporate executives who are earning over $200,000 a year have a lot of excess time. There are different areas of tech that you can play for sure. But if you don't have a lot of time, what I would say, or so if you have less time, you should find models that will allow you to get quick wins with the amount of time that you have. And I think that's where, I know this is where one of the most powerful assets that you can become involved in are alternative assets, specifically real estate, rental real estate. Reason for that is when you're looking at many of the profiles that are in IT. I work with a lot of people that are in software specifically, right? Because software and hardware in high. However, those individuals, those leaders, those execs, they tend to have excess capital that is available. And if they can get a rate of return from an asset that they are building ownership in, and whether that is a low level of ownership or a high level of ownership, I mean, you can do limited partnerships. You may own as little as 2%, or if you own an entire asset, 100%. We don't have to be too technical there, but that is really about taking an asset that you have, which is cash, and making that cash create a higher return than it's doing just sitting in the bank, basically. And those, you don't need as much time. However, you do need time to go through your due diligence, understand what you're investing in, understand either you're going to manage it yourself, you're going to have someone else manage it. So I see those as two different types of, it's leveraging the asset that you have the most. One is when you have lots of time, high tech, and I know it's a higher, get much more higher return. And if you have less time and more cash, in these two examples, I'd see that as someone who has much more of an opportunity to move forward or create options for themselves with real estate.
Yeah, most of them, they have cash, because corporate, this is the what the standard in corporate. They are individuals that they are cash rich and time poor. Yep. So, but the property, for example, can actually little by little, of course, if they do the right investment and they pick the right property, can actually replace the salary. And then, well, they go to a corporate job because they want to, not because they have to. I remember when you tell the story about your parents, right? Yeah. It's a distinction, okay? Going to work because you want to, and going to work because you have to. Yeah, because the other, but the other we talk a lot is about people. Wow, I want to become a millionaire, and then I'm gonna be sitting on the beach. Well, when I make a million, I
Yeah.
went to the beach, and after 3 days, I was bored to death.
You're
I come
bored.
back.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah. No,
it works like
no, it doesn't. And would you be okay with me sharing a secret
absolutely.
with
Go
you?
ahead.
Okay.
Yes, yes,
So
go for it.
Harry, when I corporate, for many years, so I was that classic over like analysis paralysis person. I'd done everything well in corporate. And then I remember having a conversation with my boss in 2008. He is Scottish. He was investing in properties that were living in Spain, but he was investing in properties back in Scotland. And I just remember going, well, hang on a second. You have this really high paid job. You're my boss. How is it that you have time to invest in property, but the property's not even here? And so then that idea of, okay, well, I'm from the US. I want to buy property. I thought I was going to buy here in Spain. Didn't work out for me because I had my eyes on a different location, a different market. And so that was the US. But it took me 5 years of overthinking, analyzing, trying to figure out exactly what was going to be the very first rental property that I purchased. And it took a really painful event of me missing my oldest son's third birthday party to make me realize like I actually have to take the voice is getting louder to do something for myself to create an asset that I will own. And so from the time that I missed that birthday party to my purchasing my very first asset, it was just over a year or just less than a year. So from October to June, so less than a year, right? But it wasn't because of money. It was because I missed something that was important to me, which was my oldest son's third birthday party. And the reason I tell that story is many times we think that it's just about making money that moves us to action. And it wasn't like I knew the theory, but nothing was happening in my life that was important enough to move me to action. And so it was the emotion of missing my son's third birthday party that actually had me then say, okay, now it's time to, it's action. I took action. And after I took action, and it wasn't perfect, right? And I took action on imperfect information and I made mistakes, right? It was what we were talking about before. It was going from that fluency, going from theoretical genius to actually developing expertise. And so I made mistakes along the way. But what happened was 4 years later, I was at a point where I was going into my corporate role, not because I needed the paycheck. I didn't need the paycheck anymore because the assets that I'm now owning and controlling, they didn't cover my salary, right? They didn't cover my salary, but what they did cover is what I talk about is it gave me options because all of my bills were paid based on the assets that I owned myself. And so for the next 4 years after that, I went into my job because I wanted to, because I liked being able to sit down with CEOs from multi-billion euro types of companies. I really enjoyed working with extremely smart people that were solving, 8-figure problems through software. But it was a very different mindset for me going in to work every day, Harry, or to travel on a plane because I was going to work because I wanted to be there, not because I needed to be there, because I needed the paycheck. And the way that I showed up for work every day was very different because not only did I take the expertise that I had from my corporate life,
100%.
I also took in, I was learning as the chief everything officer of my own small business. It gave me much more confidence when I was at the corporate job, and the corporate expertise I would then bring to build my business even faster because the type of company that I was working for, we were working on enterprise software for processes. And so having those two different points of view, number one, going to work because I wanted to, not because I needed to, but then also having those two different perspectives, it made me a much better and much more confident and effective employee. And then having those specialized skills actually helped me to find the right talent, build the right me, so that at the end of the day, I was also feeling much more fulfilled. And then the last part of the story is, although these things were happening very and going in the right direction, I would have still stayed in corporate if you wanted, but my father got really ill.
Oh,
And
wow.
when my father got ill, and my father's still alive and he's doing much, I just want to let you
Oh,
know
very
that.
good.
But it was, I had the first 4 years that I was working in my corporate job. I was building my business on the side. I was getting in alignment with myself so that I didn't miss any more really important events for me. But then there was a before and after, because then those next 4 years, Harry, as I mentioned, those next 4 years, I was going to my job because I wanted to, not because I needed the paycheck. I enjoyed the people that I was working with, and I was doing the things that I wanted. And I also, I enjoyed the benefits of corporate and opening doors because I was working for a very large enterprise software company. And I would have stayed, but my dad got sick. And so when my dad got sick, I realized that this has been a really, really good positive experience for me because corporate was really positive for me. It gave me a lot, and I gave corporate a lot. But what I realized is because I took the initiative to create my own asset and assets that I controlled, that gave me the options to be able to say, this is a life that's been great up until now. And now I just want to continue to lean into this. And I want to continue to um, build out the enterprise, my enterprise, be able to have the option and the choice in corporate life behind. And so I just wanted to answer that and probably give you a bit more of because it's not always easy. It's simple, but it's not always easy and it's not always perfect. And I've had, business problems and challenges since then. But hey, I mean, that's just that's story that I at least wanted to share with you.
So, Billy, if someone is in love with our conversation, how people can find you, how this process works, can you share this with us?
Yeah, Harry, yes, it's super generous of you. So I think if any of the things that I've talked about right now, especially if you're someone who is a corporate exec and you're interested, that voice getting louder and louder, and you just want to figure out like what are the steps, I would say the best thing to do is go to makeitoptional.com. Make it optional, meaning make your corporate role optional. Go to
Well,
makeitoptional.com.
like the name.
Yeah, thank you. You can pick up, just leave your email address, and then that way you can find out a bit more about my world, how I'm helping other executives today, and more importantly, this is something that will give you a really clear roadmap as to how you can do it. The second thing I would say, Harry, is if anyone likes LinkedIn, like you and I do, just check us out on LinkedIn. I think I'm the only Billy Keels in Barcelona, Spain. So go ahead
Easy
and
to find
just
you.
yeah. It's really defined, so you can find Billy Keels and LinkedIn. Just let me know you've listened to Harry and I. It'd be great to continue the conversation. And if nothing else, you can go to billykeels.com and find out more about me.
Thank you so much, Billy. You have been fantastic, and I'm glad that we covered this topic because we do have a lot of listeners in corporate that they are on the fence, and from this broadcast, we want it to be free. We want to be happy.
Yeah.
We want to still they want to have the corporate job and they love what they do there. They do they like to be solving these multi-million dollar problems. At least they go there because they want to, because they have to. Their dynamic change completely. Even the way that people perceive you change completely. Yeah,
Yes, it does.
And you can be ease and that's gonna help with the mental health. We have entrepreneurs that we have interviewed in this podcast, and this is sad. That's what happened. That they been 20 years don't been taken seriously in the corporate job. They have been uh, just there like just for the position. And every time they have an idea, every time they have this, they get dismissed and holding it for 20 years. And then they just finally become entrepreneur and they have this big relief and realization that now the ability to provide all the ideas and everything taken on board. And now they finally can find out that they're really worth it. And a lot of, unfortunately, in corporate, it depends on the culture of the company, can make a big impact the mental health of the employees. And then we have other people, like, for example, I trained one person in Polish speaking in London, and I remember a woman. She has a Harvard degree, okay, and she was in corporate, one of the major firms in London that do investment, big time investment. We talk about a lot of money there. And she realized that she only got hired because they needed a woman in the C-suite. And I was telling her, no, but you need to prove them that you're worth it. And she said, Harry, what is I gonna prove it? I got a Harvard degree. I'm as qualified and I have the same track record like everybody else in this in the company. Yet, I realized after 6 months, after a year, they didn't really want me, but they didn't really need me in the company. They don't gonna take any of my advice on board. They're not gonna take anything on board. They just, I'm there in the C-suite because it looks good. A lot of kind of things, and then the woman was, doing the transition to open their own business and to create a movement and things like this. So the point of the story is that that corporate, if you love it, and it's good, but at least, Billy, what we encourage everyone from here is to change the dynamics. Okay, you want to go to a corporate job, it's because you want to, not because you have to, and you can have a business on the side. And if you have fun, like we have, like Billy and I, we have been an entrepreneur, right? And been on the traveling a lot. I do travel a lot. I speak all over the world. So I speak in Singapore, Dubai, Mexico, Peru, and now also in the States. So in mind, you like this type of dynamic. The most important thing, like being an entrepreneur, you can actually design your life. Look at Billy. He's in France. He lives in Spain. He's speaking a lot of languages. And if tomorrow Billy decides to go and live, I don't know, in Italy. Have you lived in Italy?
I did, yeah.
Look at that.
Italy
well,
well,
even Italy, in Czech Republic.
There you go. It's maybe a little bit too for me. I've been there. I like it. I like it. Winters are very cold.
So being an entrepreneur, what's going to become as a benefit is that you will be able to design your life and operate from whatever it makes happen. So either way, we want the best for all our listeners. And Billy, thank you so much one more time for being in the podcast. And for all of you following the podcast, see you in our next episode of Unstoppable, how brave entrepreneurs like Billy break at work and achieve the first million. Bye for now.
Follow us for more interviews with world's most influential, audacious entrepreneurs that overcame challenges and adversity, providing you with the blueprint of how they sold their first million so you can grow your business exponentially.